After all the heartache, I finally managed to win my husband back, but now I'm getting ready to leave him. I've secured an apartment for my baby and me, and I've organized everything. I'm fully prepared for custody arrangements, whether shared or otherwise. I've also divided our finances, transferring my share into a separate account that will remain untouched until the divorce proceedings and asset division are finalized. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks when I discovered my husband was having an affair while I was still recovering from giving birth. It felt as though my heart had shattered into a million pieces. I loved him deeply, and I thought we were in this together. But when I found out, I knew it was over. Yet, my curiosity gnawed at me. I needed to understand what she had that I didn't. Did he really love her? I began to go through his text messages, and what I found was heartbreaking. He was alive again with her, he was happy and excited. She was single and childless, which meant she had all the time in the world to make him her priority. I couldn't help but feel confused. Even amidst the chaos of our lives, he had always been my love, and I made sure he knew it daily. Yet, it wasn't enough. I sifted through thousands of messages between them, and it felt surreal. I started to transform into everything he had fantasized about in the beginning. At first, it was strange and uncomfortable for both of us, but I persisted. Each time he planned to see her, I found a way to keep him home or exhausted, so he wouldn't have the energy to go to her. Gradually, his messages to her dwindled, and the passion that had once fueled their connection began to fade. Soon, replying to her became a chore. The complaints started to roll in, and he began to pull away from her. He was happier at home, eagerly anticipating returning to me. The sweet messages came flooding back during the day, expressing how much he missed me. The husband I fell in love with was returning, and then, one day, the moment I had been waiting for finally happened. He ended things with her. He told her he loved me, that everything was great again, and that she was no longer needed. I felt an immense sense of relief, I could finally breathe again. But even as I savored that victory, I knew I was preparing for divorce. He would receive the papers the day I moved into my new life in my new apartment. I anticipated a wave of judgment for what I was about to do, especially since I had neglected him and pushed him into another woman's arms when I couldn't meet his needs. I would carry the guilt with me for the rest of my life. In my defense, I never intended for things to turn out this way. Our lives had changed drastically, and I was trying to navigate a new and exciting chapter. I had become immersed in a kind of happiness that I thought I was sharing with him, all while grappling with a body that felt alien to me, a truly frightening experience. But he could have reached out to me, could have shared his pain, but he chose deception instead. He destroyed our love, our future, and even our shared history. Nothing would ever be the same again. In the midst of my turmoil, I found some solace in comments from others. One user mentioned how they would have immediately confronted him, expressing outrage not just for cheating, but for doing so while I was postpartum. They applauded my decision to take back control and noted that I wasn't neglecting him, I was becoming a mother. Instead of stepping up as a father, he sought comfort elsewhere. I felt grateful for their support and hoped I had enough evidence to protect myself in case he tried to downplay the affair. Another user encouraged me to focus on my happiness, which I was starting to embrace. Yes, I was sad that he wasn't the man I would spend the rest of my life with, but I was blessed with the most amazing little boy. I still felt young and beautiful, surrounded by love and support. I believed romantic love would find me again. Yet another user warned me about the potential implications of moving money before the divorce, but I was careful. The funds were still in my name, part of the estate, and I didn't want him accessing them. It felt like a delicate dance, and I was determined to stay one step ahead. Fast forward a week, I'm moving out on April 1st, what better day to pull the ultimate April Fool's prank on my dear husband. He had always loved that day. But I felt a pang of guilt. I knew what I was doing was painful, yet every time I questioned my choices, I reminded myself of their conversations. I wasn't the villain here, I would end the marriage and tell him it was because we simply weren't compatible anymore. Maybe I wouldn't even reveal that I knew about her. Let him think whatever he wanted as he realized I was really gone. When my son is older, we could tell him we parted ways amicably, with no hard feelings, just two people who fell out of love. He doesn't need to carry the burden of knowing that his father shattered our family. It's okay if people hate me for this, I'm doing what I need to do. Another comment struck a chord, why should I feel guilty? It was him who cheated. I took a deep breath, trying to hold on to my resolve amidst the chaos, knowing that I was finally reclaiming my life, even if it meant enduring this painful transition. Once upon a time, a woman found herself in a situation that left her reeling. As she sat in her quiet living room, surrounded by the remnants of a once happy life, she couldn't help but reflect on the tangled web of betrayal that had ensnared her. Her husband, who had promised her the world, had shattered that promise, and now she was left to navigate the aftermath. It was almost as if she were plotting behind the scenes, fueled by bitterness and hurt, refusing to give him the chance to apologize or explain himself. In the virtual realm, users began sharing their thoughts. One user, overwhelmed by the situation, voiced the question that lingered in many minds: what were all these women doing engaging in affairs with married men? What could they possibly gain from such heartbreak? Who is raising these girls? They wondered, feeling as if they had stepped into some surreal twilight zone. The woman could only draw from the messages she had read, explaining that it was love for one of them, a complicated and convoluted love that disregarded the existence of vows and commitment. She, the betrayed wife, had become just an obstacle in their path, an annoyance in their tangled affair. As the online discussion unfolded, another user chimed in, suggesting that the man in question didn't seem remorseful for his actions. Instead of empty apologies, he wanted to pursue another woman without facing the consequences of his decisions. That sentiment echoed in the woman's mind as she prepared for a significant change in her life. 2 months passed, and with it came a surge of messages asking for an update. She had promised to share her journey once she found her footing, and now, finally ready to speak, she sat down to write. "Hello, everyone," she began, "I'm sorry for my absence. I've been busy adjusting to my new life." She had received countless messages asking if she had moved out, if there were any developments in her situation. She hoped this update would reach everyone who had been concerned. She had done exactly as she planned, she moved out. After confronting her husband with divorce papers, she told him she was no longer in love with him. They both agreed that it would be better to be co-parents rather than continue their strained relationship as a couple. She informed him that she had found a new place to live and that he could either buy her out of their current home or sell it once the divorce was finalized. The shock on his face was evident, though perhaps not as profound as her own discovery of his infidelity. In disbelief, he had questioned if she had hit her head or if she was suffering from some medical condition, showing more concern for her mental state than the pain he had caused. Anger bubbled within him as he demanded answers. Why did she want to leave? How long had she stopped loving him? But her responses remained vague, echoing the complexities of emotions that neither of them could fully grasp at that moment. "There's no one else," she had reassured him, even as he struggled to comprehend the reality of their crumbling marriage. The audacity of his questioning made her blood boil. She reminded him of their son, urging him to think of the child before acting on his feelings of vengeance. With their son in the picture, he managed to keep the peace, but it wasn't long before his true nature resurfaced. 2 weeks later, her mother-in-law, in a tone dripping with passive aggression, let slip that her husband had begun seeing someone new. She had apologized for the revelation, claiming it was simply to prepare the woman for what was to come. Yet, as the wife listened, she couldn't help but detect a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Oh, you mean Karen?" She had replied casually, a name she had given the mistress for obvious reasons. The look of shock on her mother-in-law's face was priceless as she pressed for details, clearly taken aback. "Did my ex tell you about her?" she asked. "Oh no," the woman replied calmly, "but she isn't new. He's been with her since I gave birth, maybe even before." The conversation felt surreal, as if they were discussing the weather rather than a painful betrayal. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Her father-in-law and mother-in-law exchanged glances, uncertain of what to believe. How could she possibly know? She hadn't seen her husband since their breakup. It became clear that her revelation had turned the tables, and now the truth was out in the open. In the aftermath, her ex-husband had begun to call her daily, showering her with apologies. "Why didn't you tell me how much I hurt you?" he asked, professing his undying love and regret. It seemed he had finally realized the consequences of his actions, feeling the weight of responsibility that had previously escaped him. His mother even apologized on his behalf, although she could not control her son's choices. "I love you," he texted her every night, a desperate plea for reconciliation. She hoped his newfound remorse wouldn't complicate the divorce process, fearing it would drag on indefinitely. His reaction had changed dramatically since he learned that he was the cause of their marriage's downfall. The divorce was still in progress, and she promised to keep everyone updated on any significant developments. In the comments section, a user offered a harsh but honest perspective, suggesting she should send her ex-husband a good-night text to his new girlfriend, implying that he should feel the consequences of his actions. She speculated whether they were still together, believing they might not be after the truth surfaced. Reflecting on her ex-in-law's reactions, she admitted they had been devastated, particularly her father-in-law, with whom her ex-husband was still not on speaking terms. In this chaotic tapestry of love, betrayal, and healing, she could finally see a glimmer of hope, ready to embrace the life ahead of her, one breath at a time. In a small town, the aftermath of a painful divorce often reveals more than just broken hearts, it lays bare the hidden truths that linger in the shadows. 2 years ago, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of betrayal and heartbreak when I discovered my ex-wife, Sarah, had cheated on me. It was a devastating blow that shattered the love I had for her, and I had no tolerance for infidelity. Our marriage, which had begun with such promise at the tender age of 20, crumbled beneath the weight of her dishonesty. We had 2 beautiful daughters, Emily and Sophie, born within the first year of our union, and I was determined to shield them from the fallout of our fractured relationship. Since our separation, I had worked hard to rebuild my life. My priority was always my daughters, they needed stability and love, especially after the chaos of our divorce. I was resolute in my decision to avoid dating for a while, wanting to focus on them rather than dive into another relationship too quickly. I spent countless evenings reading bedtime stories and helping with homework, trying to create a warm, loving environment for them, free from the tension of our past. But despite my efforts to move forward, Sarah and her family clung to the hope that we could rekindle what we once had. It seemed absurd. How could they expect me to forget the betrayal that had torn us apart? I had made it clear time and again that I had no desire to revisit that chapter of our lives. Yet, every time I turned around, it felt as though they were pushing me back toward her. I didn't harbor any hatred for Sarah, but I had no interest in her life unless it directly affected our daughters. For years, it seemed I was the only one who had truly moved on. Sarah hadn't dated anyone since our divorce. While she might have believed that was commendable, I found it hard to respect her decision. It felt like a mockery. She had once engaged in an affair, and now she was putting herself on a pedestal for not seeking companionship. Meanwhile, my girls were oblivious to the complexities of our situation, they were unaware of the depths of their mother's choices. 3 years ago, it was Sarah herself who told them about the affair, and I suspected she had spun her own narrative to paint herself in a better light. Despite my requests for her to stop speaking about the past in front of them, it seemed she had only become more subtle in her tactics over the years. I noticed the little things, the comments about how she looked, the way my daughters would come to me with pictures of their mom, all dolled up and smiling, as if trying to coax some admiration from me. I felt a swell of frustration but tried to keep my cool for the sake of my daughters. Then, life took an unexpected turn. I met Claire, an incredible woman who was 8 years younger than me. We had been friends for 4 years, bonding over a shared hobby that eventually blossomed into something deeper. Our relationship developed gradually, transitioning from friends to partners, and I found myself falling for her in a way I hadn't thought possible after my marriage ended. Claire became my confidant, my support system, and I loved her more than I had anticipated. But as our relationship grew serious, so did the tension between me and Sarah. My daughters, who had initially been indifferent about my new relationship, began to express their opinions. They would mention how great their mother looked and ask if I thought she was dating anyone. I sensed a shift, a growing discomfort as they grappled with the idea of me moving on while their mother remained single. It came to a head one Saturday afternoon. I had taken the girls out for ice cream, and they couldn't stop talking about their mother. "Dad, did you know Mom still keeps her wedding ring?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with concern. "She says it's because she believes in true love." I felt a wave of irritation wash over me. "That doesn't mean she's waiting for me, girls. It just means she's holding on to a memory. We can't go back." Sophie chimed in, "But what if you did? What if you guys got back together? Wouldn't that be cool?" Her innocence hit me hard, and I struggled to find the right words. "I love you both, and I will always be here for you. But I'm not getting back together with your mother. We've both moved on, and that's okay." Their faces fell, and I knew I had to tread carefully. "Your mom and I will always be connected through you too. But love is complicated. Just because she wants something doesn't mean it's what's best for everyone." Later that evening, I called Claire to discuss the day. "I don't want to hide you from my daughters," I said, frustration lacing my voice. "But it seems like every time I take a step forward, Sarah pulls me back into the past." Claire listened patiently, then replied, "You're doing the right thing by being honest with them. They need to understand that while their family looks different now, it can still be happy." I appreciated her support. We had talked about the challenges of merging our lives, and I felt lucky to have someone who understood the complexities I faced. As I hung up, I knew I needed to confront Sarah. She had to understand that her actions were affecting our daughters more than she realized. A few days later, I arranged to meet her at a coffee shop. The air was tense as we sat across from each other. "Sarah, we need to talk about the girls," I began, my voice steady but firm. "You can't keep dragging them back into our past. It's not fair to them or to me. I've moved on, and it's time you did, too." She looked defensive but then sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I thought I was protecting them, helping them understand. I just want them to know that they can count on me." "But at what cost?" I pressed. "They're hurting, Sarah. It's not just about you anymore. Let's focus on being the best parents we can be for them." As we talked, I realized that both of us had our own healing to do. This was a new chapter in our lives, one where we needed to find a way to coexist peacefully for the sake of our daughters. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but as long as we focused on our girls and worked through our past, I had hope that we could both find our own happiness, whether together or apart. In the end, it became clear that the past, while painful, was something I could learn from. I had been through the fire, but now I was ready to embrace my future with Claire and give my daughters the love and stability they deserved. Together, we could navigate the complexities of our lives, proving that even amidst chaos, there is always room for healing and love. After my divorce, things started off relatively smoothly. But soon, my daughters began returning home earlier than we had planned, often finding me with Clemens. There was nothing inappropriate going on, no sex or anything that could be misconstrued, but the tension began to rise. Their complaints rolled in. "Why is she here? And it's not fair to Mom." It felt as if they believed I was doing this out of spite, to hurt their mother. I tried to explain, sitting them down repeatedly, talking it through, but they just didn't get it. They held on to this absurd fantasy that I would get back together with their mother. Clemens, bless her, has been incredibly understanding through all this. She told me to give the girls time, but I'm starting to doubt that approach. More time hasn't helped so far, so why would it make a difference now? At this point, I feel lost and am reaching out to you all for advice. Is there even a way to help my daughters realize that there's no chance of reconciling with their mother? One user suggested I have a frank conversation with them, emphasizing that while I'm on good terms with their mom and we're both committed to providing a stable environment for them, there's absolutely no chance of us getting back together. I should clarify that if their mother implies otherwise, she's mistaken. I also mentioned my feelings for Clemens and how I see a future with her, not with their mother. But despite having this conversation countless times, it just doesn't seem to sink in. About a year ago, they asked why I didn't want to reconcile with their mother. When I mentioned her cheating, I wasn't sure if it was the right move, but I felt I had no other option. As it turns out, their mother had told them about her infidelity years earlier. They cling to this idea that she's faithful to me now, and when I point out that she can't be faithful to someone she's not with, they just ignore it. I've talked to my ex about this many times, probably close to 100, asking her not to drag our adult lives into the mix and affect our daughters negatively. But it's like talking to a wall. At one point, I even considered pursuing sole custody, but I was advised against it, so I dropped that idea. Another user raised a good question: do my daughters even know why we divorced? Do they understand that their mother cheated? While I usually hesitate to share this kind of information with young kids, my daughters are nearly adults. It seems like they've been living under a misconception about the divorce, likely fed by their mother's narrative without my input. Maybe setting the record straight could help. I tried telling them about a year ago, but it turned out their mother had already filled them in when they were just shy of turning 13. They're aware she cheated, but here's the tricky part: they've always seen their mother as loving and nurturing, both toward them and me. They don't remember the time she was cold and distant during her affair, though it wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a full-blown affair. My daughters never witnessed the disconnect between us. They should never have seen the struggles in our intimate life. I often felt rejected, dejected even, and it wasn't until a close friend helped me see it that I realized the problem lay not with me but with her. I began searching for answers about why our intimate life had deteriorated so significantly. It wasn't just about sex. Even the little things we used to share, like kissing each other goodbye at the door, had vanished. Looking back, I see how deeply hurtful it was when she denied me even the most basic affection, giving it to someone else outside our marriage. To me, that betrayal is unforgivable. I don't believe my daughters can understand that pain, even if I did share it, which I prefer not to. Their insistence on wanting us to reconcile fills me with regret and frustration. Where was all this supposed love and guilt when it mattered? It's been some time since I last posted here, and I feel compelled to update all of you who offered me your kindness and support during my struggles. So much has happened, including my daughters unexpectedly stumbling across my post. I had no idea they browsed Reddit, let alone this forum. The fallout from their discovery has been overwhelming, and I'm still trying to navigate the chaos it has created in our family dynamic. When I came home from work one day, I found my daughters in tears. They practically jumped into my arms, hugging me tightly, refusing to let go as they begged me to forgive them. It turned out they had come across one of my messages, the one where I described the painful details of their mother's affair, and they were devastated. We took some time to process it together, but we managed to get through it as a family. There was nothing to forgive. They were still young and loved their mother, and she had used that love to manipulate them. That was her doing, not theirs. We went through a lot of counseling, and after a few months, the therapist who had been guiding us said that we no longer needed weekly sessions, just an occasional check-in. Since then, we've grown closer than ever before. Sadly, though, their relationship with their mom suffered, which, to me, is understandable. I tried to remind them not to dwell on what she did, as I had moved past it years ago. It's something we all worked through, both in individual counseling and our shared sessions. Now, it's behind us. I did have a brief confrontation with my ex-wife, making it clear that she was not to mention this getting back together idea to our daughters anymore. Whether she understood or not, I can't say for sure, but the girls haven't brought it up since, or maybe they just choose to ignore her when she does. Either way, as long as my daughters are doing well, I'm not too concerned about what my ex is up to. The situation has improved, and I'm grateful for that. Over time, my daughters have also grown closer to my girlfriend. They've started talking with her more, going beyond just polite greetings. They even ask her for advice now, usually about things like fashion or makeup, and it warms my heart to see them bonding. Witnessing this shift, I began to consider proposing to my girlfriend. She's been a pillar of support throughout all this, and we've built a strong foundation together. I couldn't think of a better way to express my love for her. But then, 2 months ago, something incredible happened. Clement, my girlfriend, and my daughters had secretly planned to surprise me. They proposed to me. I was floored, not just by the proposal itself, but by the fact that my daughters had teamed up with Clement to organize it all. They even prepared a special dinner and planned a night out to celebrate. It was a simple, private ceremony with our closest friends and family, but it meant everything to me. We're now expecting a child, and my daughters can't wait to spoil their future sibling. To all of you listening, I know I may sound calm now, but I was emotionally whiplashed during this whole ordeal. My ex-wife's attempt to manipulate our daughters hurt deeply, and it still stings a little, but what matters most is that my daughters have come through it stronger. They've grown, we've all grown, and now we're moving forward together, closer than ever. I'm hitting the no way button on any more interference from my ex-wife because she's lost that place in our lives. Now, as for my daughters, I believe they needed to face the hard truth to fully understand the situation. It was tough, but ultimately, it has led us to where we are now. They're happy, I'm happy, and I'm incredibly grateful for Clement and everything we've built together. And now, we're all excited to welcome this new chapter in our lives. So, here's to moving forward. To anyone out there going through something similar, I hope you find the strength to keep going. There's always hope on the other side. I can't figure out where to go from here. I know everyone would tell me to leave him, but it's more complicated than that. There are kids, a house, and a business involved. I don't even have the full story yet. Nobody will talk to me, and the mental images swirling in my head are driving me insane. I'm not ready to talk to friends or family, so I'm turning to Reddit. What do I do now? Restarting my life at 32 feels like a nightmare. Edit. A lot of people have suggested moving money and restricting access to accounts. I even texted him, pathetically, hoping he'd explain things before I contacted a lawyer. He replied, saying I should do whatever I need to do, and that he could come back tonight to tell me what happened. Depending on how that conversation goes, I may or may not update you all. It's like I'm getting the runaround, and I don't know why. In the comments, someone asked if I'd thought about therapy. Yes, I definitely need it. I feel like the world is moving around me while I'm trapped in a bubble, just watching. I know therapy will be necessary at some point, but right now, the embarrassment is overwhelming. And here's another layer, I'm starting to suspect my husband might be cheating on me, with my sister. This has been a weird issue within my family since we started dating. My husband comes from a very well-off family, and he does pretty well for himself. I've never noticed my sister showing jealousy, but I can't ignore the tension with others. Now, she's blocking my calls and texts. I don't think they're together, as her partner would have told me. Still, I hadn't even considered the idea of getting tested for STDs. I hate this so much. I checked our bank accounts, and thankfully, nothing has been withdrawn since he left. I'll keep a close watch on it. And as for reaching out, I have no idea where they are. I assumed he'd be at his parents' place, but he's not. If she's home, her partner hasn't mentioned anything weird. I've never suspected anything between them before. Just last week, I saw their text messages, they seemed totally normal. He even asked me to check a message on his phone, and I didn't see anything suspicious. He's never been secretive about his phone. Update: I wasn't planning on this, but the messages and comments have been overwhelming, so here we are. I've spoken to my sister, and my husband did come home that night. He packed some things, sat down with me, and told me everything. Turns out, he had been staying at one of our rental properties. As some of you guessed, my sister assaulted him. Let me explain. This all happened last Sunday. My sister's been going through a rough time lately. Her relationship has been rocky, and it's been affecting her behavior. She even told us she didn't want to go home that night and was avoiding her partner. My husband smokes cannabis, and he started making his own cartridges with oils he buys, which are stronger than usual. He had been smoking a potent one all night, and they kept passing it around after I stopped. I went to check on our puppies in the garage and left them alone for maybe 5 minutes. When I came back, my husband was alone, and he said my sister had gone to bed because she wasn't feeling well. He said he got up the next morning to leave, and that's when she grabbed him out of nowhere, pulling down his pants and… well, you get the idea. He managed to get away pretty quickly, but she grabbed his hands as if to hold him there. He says it lasted maybe 5 seconds before he got up and asked her what she was doing. She just mumbled an apology and went to bed. I knew I might be lied to when I asked, but we have security cameras all around the house, so I asked him to show me. He pulled it up on the iPad, and while I didn't want to see the act, he insisted. He's terrified that even with proof, people might accuse him of something he didn't do. He's convinced I'll leave him and that he deserves it, but he's also afraid of losing our family and everything we've built. My sister's partner left his last relationship because of infidelity, and my husband is sick over the thought of being responsible for the same thing happening again. My husband is holding up okay, but he feels overwhelmingly guilty about the whole situation. He just wishes the entire mess could be forgotten so we could all move on as if nothing had ever happened. I've told him that there's no way that's possible. I finally got through to my sister. She hadn't blocked me but was simply ignoring my calls and texts. We tried contacting her from my husband's phone, and I noticed she had actually texted him a few times since this all went down. Her messages were just a series of apologies, over and over. I'm sorry, I messed up, I don't know what happened. But she never sent me anything. Eventually, she called, so we put her on speaker. I asked her point blank what happened, half expecting her to lie, but she ended up repeating exactly what my husband had told me. She couldn't give me any explanation for why she did it, though. She was crying the entire time, playing the victim, going on about how we all must hate her now. But still, no explanation. She claimed it was the biggest mistake of her life. She's called in sick to work and spent the last few days just driving around aimlessly, hoping something would happen to her. I lost it then, totally blew up at her. My husband tried to calm things down, which only frustrated me more. I felt like he was defending her, and it turned into an argument between us. He insisted that she's clearly not in a good place and that he didn't want anyone feeling so low that they'd harm themselves. But that did nothing to calm me down. I ended up sending her multiple text messages, letting her know exactly how I felt about her actions. We also told her to talk to her partner, as we planned to speak to him the next day. I thought it would be better if he heard it from her instead of us. My husband really doesn't want to have that conversation, but here we are, stuck in this chaotic mess. We'll get through it together, though. I've made sure he knows I'm on his side and suggested therapy to help him process everything, but ultimately, the decision is up to him. I can't imagine her partner sticking around after he finds out. Our kids are very close and spend a lot of time together, so it's painful to think about what this will do to them. We have so much to work through, and it's not fair that the kids might lose the connection because of all this. I want to thank everyone who commented on my last post. A lot of you predicted exactly what happened, so I did my best to stay calm and understanding. As for the cameras, yes, we have cameras outside the house, but they were there before we moved in, so I don't think about them much. I have no idea how to check the footage. That's something my husband handles. He's well within his rights to press charges if he wants to, but he's adamant that he doesn't want to involve the police. One commenter mentioned that if he wants to file a report, I should support him fully. And I agree. Another suggested that I try to understand his reaction. Sometimes, people minimize what happened to protect themselves, and my husband might be doing that. He doesn't want to see himself as a victim, so he's downplaying the situation. It's similar to when something embarrassing happens, and you try to laugh it off to save face. He might be reacting in ways to cope with his own feelings, and I have to remind myself to be gentle with him. He didn't consent to what happened, and he shouldn't feel ashamed. I'm here for him every step of the way. I also need to center him in this process, putting his needs and feelings first. I'm furious, yes, but he's the one who needs support right now. I'm trying to avoid telling his sister's partner until he's ready for that conversation. If I need to vent, I'll do it with a trusted friend rather than push him into actions he's not ready to take. It's also messy and painful, but I know we'll get through it. My sister's actions were unforgivable, and it's going to take a long time to heal. But for now, I need to keep my focus on my husband and what he needs. In this story, it's clear that emotions run high, with each person involved dealing with their feelings in vastly different ways. It's a mix of chaos and tenderness, and, honestly, I feel that the commenter who gave some advice really hit the mark. I hope the original poster takes it, and maybe we'll get an update, or maybe not. But here's hoping they read it. Now, let's dive into the fourth story, one that's equally heart-wrenching and hopeful. The story is about a son who finds himself torn between celebrating a joyous occasion and facing a painful reality. His father, who's been battling cancer for several years, has reached a critical point in his fight. The son begins by sharing that he's lived in a different city, about 300 kilometers away, since 2018. He married his wife in a civil ceremony last year, and they're now preparing for their big wedding celebration on Saturday. Sadly, his father's health has declined to the point where he may not be able to attend. Just days before the wedding, his father, who is 74, went for a routine cancer checkup. He was unexpectedly admitted to the neurological emergency department after doctors discovered that a tumor in his spine had metastasized to the point that it might cause paraplegia. An MRI is scheduled, and depending on the results, emergency surgery may follow. His father, a man who rarely shows emotion, broke down over the phone. He was devastated at the thought of missing his son's wedding, which he had been eagerly looking forward to. Hearing his father cry like that was a first for the son, and it left him feeling utterly helpless. Despite the situation, the son wants to find a way for his father to be part of the celebration. He encourages his dad to follow the doctor's advice, even if it means missing the wedding. They discuss the possibility of including him in the ceremony via a tablet or video call, so he can still witness the event. There's also talk of a small, belated celebration back home, with close friends and family, as a way to involve his father in the joy of the occasion. In the midst of all this, someone suggests looking into a local project called Wish Wagon, which helps fulfill wishes and provides medical transportation and care. The son immediately plans to contact them to see if there's any way they can make his father's attendance possible. Fortunately, the story takes a hopeful turn in an update the son shares a week after the wedding. He begins by thanking everyone for their support and updates that his father's situation, while still serious, is not as dire as originally thought. The doctors ultimately decide against immediate surgery, opting instead for further radiation therapy. This change in plans means that his father is able to attend the wedding after all. His parents make the trip with their camper, setting up a comfortable spot for his father to rest as needed. To everyone's surprise, his father manages to be present for almost the entire event, a feat far beyond what anyone had hoped for. The son expresses immense gratitude, both for the outcome and for the overwhelming support from the community. He also gives a shout-out to the Wish Wagon project, encouraging others to donate as they had been a lifeline of hope during a dark time. The son's joy is palpable as he reflects on how everything turned out. His father was able to share in the celebration, something that seemed nearly impossible just days earlier. Amid the roller coaster of emotions, there's a sense of relief and a renewed sense of hope. It's a story about love, resilience, and the power of community support in times of need. In another story, we hear from a young mother, 34, who recently lost her husband. She met him during an exchange semester in Australia, and they eventually married, building a life together with 2 young daughters, aged 6 and 4. Now, 3 months after her husband's passing, she finds herself grappling with grief and longing for home. She decides it's time to return to her home country, not only because the education system there is better, but also because she needs the support of her family during this difficult time. Her 6-year-old is excited about the move, as her parents have horses, which is a thrilling prospect for the little girl. But her husband's parents, who have been actively involved in the children's lives, taking care of them every weekday while the couple worked, are devastated by the news. Understandably, they are attached to their grandchildren, and the thought of them moving away is heartbreaking. The mother knows the decision is right for her and her children, but she also feels the weight of her in-laws' sorrow. She braces herself for the difficult conversations ahead, hoping to find a way to ease the transition while staying true to her decision. Both stories reflect the complexities of family relationships and the tough decisions people sometimes have to make. Whether it's finding a way to include a loved one in a special moment or moving forward in the face of loss, each story is a reminder of the resilience it takes to navigate life's challenges. I hoped that they would understand, but they didn't. It was ugly. They asked me how I could dare take away their grandchildren after losing their only son. They said my husband would be disappointed, that he'd want his kids to grow up in Australia. I had to leave because I couldn't handle the situation. I feel guilty because, yes, my husband did want to stay in Australia, but mainly because that's where we'd settled. I don't think he'd be disappointed, though. I think he'd understand. Still, I feel so guilty, but also angry. It felt cruel of my in-laws to say those things. I plan to visit Australia frequently because I don't want to deprive my children of their heritage. It's been my home for years. So, is it really wrong to go back home? When I shared my story online, people didn't blame me or my in-laws, they just thought it was a tough situation all around. Now, it's been almost 3 weeks since that post, and so much has changed. We're back home in Switzerland, living with my family. The kids are doing well, they're bonding with their grandparents and cousins, and they've even got therapy sessions lined up, just like I do. Before leaving, I went back to my in-laws to explain my side. I reassured them that we'd visit, but I need to ensure I can be the best mom I can be. They seemed understanding and even asked to have the kids the next day. I agreed, but the pickup didn't go as planned. The kids weren't ready, and then my father-in-law told me they thought it best for everyone if the kids stayed with them since I was unstable. It escalated quickly. There were tears, shouting, and threats. I had to call my lawyer, who advised me to call the police, though thankfully it didn't come to that, and they handed back the kids. But that was it for me, trust gone. I booked flights, gathered our things, and told my in-laws that they had damaged my trust. I said I'd need time to think about what this all meant for the future. We flew back home, and I let them say goodbye to the kids before we left. It hurt to leave this way, but I'm also hopeful for what's next. Right now, I'm soaking in my mom's care, especially since she's so excited to be a part of this pregnancy. Now that we're settled back in Switzerland, things are looking up. We live on my parents' farm alongside my sister and her family. My oldest has started school and is making friends, she's thrilled about the horses. We're all in therapy, but the kids don't even need it anymore. They're thriving here and seem truly happy. But as expected, my in-laws have strong feelings about me. They made it clear from the beginning that they think I'm the bad guy. At first, they even tried bad-mouthing me during video calls, but since I was secretly listening, I was able to intervene. I warned them that if they didn't stop, we wouldn't call anymore. That worked for a while, but now my father-in-law is gravely ill, and it's possible he doesn't have long left. My mother-in-law is blaming me for his illness, saying that I took the kids away and that it was too much for him. She even told the kids this, making my 5-year-old cry. Now, my 7-year-old, who was really close to her grandfather, is furious with me, convinced by my mother-in-law that I caused his illness by leaving. I'm torn about what to do. I want to cut contact to protect my kids, but I know that might be devastating for my 7-year-old. This is such a complex situation. I want what's best for them, but I also need to minimize the trauma. I feel betrayed by my mother-in-law, who won't stop blaming me. I tried talking to her, but it hasn't helped. I'm considering having the kids go back to therapy, as my in-laws are clearly causing them emotional harm. Thankfully, we left Australia when we did, because I can only imagine what they'd have done if we'd stayed. For now, I'm just trying to keep us grounded here, to make this farm feel like home. As challenging as it's been, I have to hope that things will eventually settle. I'm determined to put my kids first, even if it means making tough choices about their relationship with their grandparents. I've always believed that if you're truly committed to someone, temptation isn't even an issue. But if I knew my partner was about to cross a line, I'd try to stop them. The trouble is, sometimes you don't see it coming. I've been with my husband for 4 years, and we've been married for 6 months. We recently moved into a new apartment, and we've been pouring our hearts into renovating it together. We're both pretty handy and have been crafting our dream home, little by little. Along the way, we made friends with our neighbors, a couple just like us. The woman is gorgeous, bubbly, and we got along great from the start. She's told me how she envies our renovations because her husband doesn't enjoy that kind of thing and won't give her money for projects. She's a stay-at-home mom, and while I don't know their financial situation, I can see her husband's frugality. He's cautious with money, but I don't think he's financially controlling. Both my husband and I work, and he spends a lot of time working from home. I've noticed that, over time, our neighbor has been warming up more to my husband than to me. She's flirtatious, and I see her gravitating towards things that he likes, things I'm not as into, like hiking. She even shares his love for certain foods and desserts. She's a stay-at-home mom, so she often cooks for him, making his favorite dishes, and he's mentioned a few times how nice it is. I've come home twice now to find her at our place, either helping with renovations or bringing him lunch. He doesn't seem bothered by it at all, so I'm not sure anything's going on, but the vibe just doesn't sit right with me. When I told my mom about this, she was furious. She thinks I should confront my husband and ban our neighbor from coming over. But I've always wanted a husband who wouldn't cheat, even with temptation right there. I can't protect him from the billions of women in the world, he has to make that choice himself. My mom thinks I'm being reckless, even unhinged, for trusting him like this. I've made my feelings clear to him, though. I told him I don't appreciate her being around so much, and I've even started cooking more at home. I'm not interested in competing with another woman for my husband's attention. I love him too much for that, and I can't imagine myself cheating on him, no matter who else might be interested. I just want him to feel the same way. He hasn't done anything obvious to break my trust, but they do text occasionally. It's never flirty, but I still hate it. My mom accuses me of sitting back just to see if he'll cheat. She thinks I'm testing him, waiting to see if he'll mess up. All I want is for him to choose me without any prodding. Then today, I decided to drop by during my lunch break, an impromptu visit. Sure enough, there she was, in my kitchen, having lunch with him. At first, I played it cool. I told him I'd just come back for my gym bag. He seemed uneasy and even a bit guilty, explaining they were just having lunch, some leftovers from the night before and a pizza they ordered because there wasn't enough. She didn't even bring him lunch this time. I left, feeling my stomach twist. I sat in my car, shaking, while he tried to call me. He texted me, saying, "Darling, I know you don't like it when she's here, but there's nothing to worry about. I love you. And here I am, trying to calm myself down before heading back to work. He knows how I feel about her being there, yet every time I come home unexpectedly, she's there. It makes me wonder how often she's actually there when I'm not. We've only been married for 6 months, and I know the first year is tough, but we're both in our 30s, without kids, and this is our first real home together. Maybe it's time to face the fact that this wasn't meant to be. I'm tempted to call it quits now before things get messier. My mom might call me crazy for feeling this way, but right now, I'm just so turned off by all of it. If he wants to be with her, he can go ahead. She can keep him. I'm at work now and can't respond to his messages. He just texted again, and I still haven't replied. I need to cool off before we talk. He's saying, "Baby, you were right." But I'm not ready to hear it yet. It's been a whirlwind, and I feel like I'm barely holding on. When I finally told our neighbor to stop coming over because it made my wife uncomfortable, she caught me off guard by admitting that she had feelings for me. "You were right about her, I love you, and I can't lose you over this." I didn't respond, though. What could I even say? I had to get back to work, but now I feel like my marriage and my career are hanging by a thread on the same day. A few days later, I met up with my sisters, and I just broke down. I love him, but I can't go through with this. He's been calling and texting me nonstop, sending screenshots of conversations with her. This afternoon, I finally replied, "I love you, but I can't do this. I don't trust you with my heart anymore. Our definitions of love, respect, and boundaries are just too different. It's probably best to walk away now, before we're even more tangled up in this mess. I need space, and I'll talk when I'm ready to discuss our future." He didn't stop, though. He called 3 more times, and his next message read, "Please don't do this to us. You're the love of my life. Be angry, but don't throw it all away. Come home, yell at me, do whatever you need to do, just don't leave. You mean everything to me." That night, I just went to bed, exhausted and aching. I ignored his messages and tried to sleep, hoping for peace that never came. Then, scrolling through the comments online, I saw one that hit close to home. Someone suggested he probably knew about the neighbor's feelings long before she confessed, that he likely enjoyed the attention. They were right, but it didn't make the betrayal sting any less. Later that night, my husband sent a screenshot of a message from her. She was saying she had feelings for him, that he'd regret not being with her. He replied that she was mistaken, that he only saw her and her husband as friends. I know he's trying to do damage control now, but the sudden transparency feels forced. Why didn't he share any of this with me before? Some people asked about the neighbor's husband. I don't know much about him. He's quiet, keeps to himself, and they seem to have financial struggles. But I can't involve him in this. They have 3 small kids, and I'd hate to be the reason their lives are turned upside down. Something in my gut tells me to be cautious. It feels like any move could explode in ways I can't control. The weekend brought more chaos. My husband turned up at my sister's house with flowers, chocolates, and takeout from my favorite restaurant, trying to apologize. He swore he'd never betray me, that he'd never felt anything for her. I asked him to be honest about why he kept letting her into our lives, knowing how it made me feel. He admitted he liked the attention, that he knew about her feelings but thought he could handle it. He gave me his phone, and I scrolled through his messages. There were no flirty texts, no crossed lines, but the passive acceptance felt like a betrayal all its own. When I saw her last message, saying she could make him happier than I ever could, and his lack of a real response, something broke inside me. We talked about separation, and he asked me to hold off on divorce, to try counseling first. He begged me not to give up, saying he'd stay at his parents' house to give me space. Reluctantly, I agreed. So now, he's gone, and I'm back home, but it feels empty. He'll be back when he needs to work, but I won't be here. I'll be at my sister's. She's more than happy to help, and I'm grateful. But for now, I don't want to see him, and I'm not sure if I'll ever want to again. Now I'm sitting here in my kitchen, trying to write this out, and it just feels so frustrating. We put so much effort into creating this space, making it exactly how we wanted. My husband and I designed it together, and it was supposed to be our haven. But now, it feels like it's just a reminder of everything that's been twisted between us. My husband shared more details later, saying he knew this woman probably liked him but thought it was harmless, just that she was lonely because her husband worked all the time. He said he wasn't interested in her, and that he only went along with things because he didn't want to be rude. She'd bring lunch over, tell him how bored she was, and say she loved seeing our renovation progress. He claimed he didn't mind her attention, but it seemed to flatter him, which I couldn't understand. It wasn't like she was just there to be friendly. She mocked me, making jabs at my style and even joking that I wasn't blonde. He brushed it off, saying she was jealous. When I asked why he didn't stand up for me, he said, "If I defended you, it'd mean I cared what she thought. And I don't." But wouldn't it have been simpler to just cut her off? Why let it go on? When I asked him if he had told her husband about their little friendship, he just went silent. He knew it was wrong, and that silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. Honestly, if someone needs attention that badly, they're not my type. If he finds her opinion of him flattering, then he's not who I want to grow old with or build a family with. The final straw was when I saw one of her texts mocking our future kids, suggesting they wouldn't be blonde either. In the comments, someone suggested I install a front door camera and even inform her husband. They were convinced she was cheating on him, emotionally if not physically. My husband did block her after the last message, and he swore he was at his parents' place when it all went down. But it still eats at me. She told him she loved him and thought she could make him happier. What did he do that made her feel so entitled to say that? And after all this, he still let her in for as long as he did. Then, after I left, she confessed she wanted to sleep with him. He says he turned her down flat, and then she sent more nasty messages about me before he finally blocked her. But I still don't understand why he allowed it to go that far. Now I'm left trying to make sense of it all. Should I stay? Should I go? If I do stay, it's clear I need to protect myself with a postnuptial agreement. I can't shake the feeling that if he craved her attention, there's something deeply wrong here that won't just go away. In the end, I'm torn. My mother had once warned me about this, saying, "If you don't set boundaries, you're inviting trouble." And she was right. While I thought I was respecting his autonomy, maybe I was just being too hands-off. But it still doesn't excuse his choices, and here I am, struggling to make sense of it all. So, I guess that's the story. I'm not satisfied with how he handled things, but maybe I could have been firmer too. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope your lunch was as comforting as mine wasn't. Take care.